Alright guys, in front of us we have my son's cryo. It is his Zombie Outbreak Response Team Edition. Not really, that's a custom print from somebody. I'm not sure exactly where I got it. But this is one of his favorite knives, as you can see by all the hard use marks on it everywhere. And he came to me the other day and the knife wasn't working right. And it was right after one of you guys left a comment about breaking the torsion bars. Now, I've had several SpeedSafe knives over the years, quite the number of Kershaw leaks. I have never broke one of those torsion bars. I've broke some other things, but never one of the torsion bars. So I was like, well, what's wrong with it? We took it apart. Everything looked all right. Put it back together. Still didn't work. Took it apart again. Started looking closer at the torsion bar. And that torsion bar was toast. And here it is. As you can see, that torsion bar is done. So I went to Kershaw's website, got on their nice little web form, and I sent them my name and address and everything, and marked the little boxes that said I needed a pivot and a torsion bar. About 4 or 5 days later, this shows up in the mail. And we have a pivot and a torsion bar. So we should probably fix this thing. What do you think? To fix one of these, or take one of these apart, you're going to need a T6 and a T8 Torx driver. I use the Weehaw or Waihaw, or I have no idea how to pronounce them. And they seem to be a higher quality driver than most of the stuff you get. Some of the cheaper stuff, even the stuff supposedly designed for impact wrenches, I have trashed, taking apart these knives and putting them back together. So, without further ado, if the knife has a torsion bar in it, you are going to want to start with that knife open. Because in the open position, there's no pressure on the torsion bar. Take your T8 driver and take the pivot screw out. And then take your T6 and take the frame screws out. And you may need 2 T6 bits on a cryo because there are screw heads on both sides and you have a barrel spacer in between. So it is possible that that barrel spacer could spin on you and you may need to hold it from the other side. And we take this out, and we have the torsion bar out of this right now, so no torsion bar to worry about. So we're going to lift that up. I've already put some white lithium grease in there from the first time I took it apart. And since he's boogered up his pivot a little bit, we're going to replace his pivot. So lift the blade off, take your washers. I have different washers in this knife because we have some centering issues with it, and I'm seeing if I can get it to work a little better with some different washers. So those are not the phosphor bronze washers that are normally in here. We'll pop that pivot out. So now we'll open up the little baggie here, see what we got. We have a new torsion bar. And we have a nice, pretty new pivot that doesn't have, oh, it's actually already got some Loctite in it. See if I can get this up there where you can see it so that you might be able to identify the stuff. Okay, do you see the stuff down in the threads of that screw? If you see something like that in a screw that's new from a manufacturer, most likely it is Loctite. You know, Harley Davidson uses some kind of off-white stuff. Other manufacturers will use red, and sometimes it's a green, but it's generally the proper Loctite for the job. If you're putting Loctite in some of this stuff yourself, use blue Loctite. And I don't mean a blue bottle. It needs to say blue medium Loctite or medium thread locker. If you go and use some red Loctite on whatever item you're trying to put together, be aware that red Loctite normally does not come loose unless you apply great amounts of torque or heat. And normally whenever I do something like this, I would clean all of the oil out of it. But since we have those odd washers in his knife, I'm going to leave the oil in it and take it apart again later if necessary to clean it out. Okay, so we slid the old pivot out and put the new pivot in, and it is a D-shaped pivot, but it does not grab on the frame. It grabs on this little liner piece here. In this little liner, there's a flat right there that we'll line up here in a minute. Okay, from here we want to put one of our washers back on. If this was a regular cryo, you would have a stack of 2 phosphor bronze washers that you would put in there. But once again, we're using the Traxxas washers. We put our blade back in place and rides between the stop pin and our lock bar. And then get this thing, this has your flat, get that thing lined up where the pivot is through it. And then here comes the fun part. We're going to lay there's this little hole in the blade right here. We have a little hole right here in the blade. We're going to lay the little point of our torsion bar in there, and we're going to lay the torsion bar right there. Some of this stuff's been laying in a magnetic tray, so it's all magnetized. And then we're going to lay this on, and hopefully, okay, now that we've got it together, I am going to put pressure on both sides of it without putting any screws in it and make sure that I've got everything in the right place. And I did, but I forgot to put a washer in it. So this has got to come back off. That's got to come back out. Beautiful little spacer there's got to come back out. And we've got to put our washer on before we put the spacer in. Alright, try this again. Now lay that down in that little hole. And lay this so that it's falling down in between these two pillars, but not all the way to the edge. I've got this one set about 1/8 of an inch or so off the edge, and I think that will give us enough clearance whenever we put the scale back on there, and I believe it did. Yep, everything felt like it popped into place. Try this again. I'm going to go ahead and hold pressure and make sure everything works okay. Okay, everything worked. We have pressure on our torsion bar again. And at this point, the way I like to do things is put our pivot screw in. And if this one had not already had Loctite on it, I would have put some blue Loctite on that pivot screw. And I take it down snug, not tight, just snug. And then we go back to our T6 and put our body screws back in. One other little tip, if you go to work on these, take the pocket clip off. It keeps the knife from rocking around and keeps it more flat so that you can actually work on it. Alright, so we have it back together. It looks like about 50% lock up, so we're going to call that good. And wow, believe it or not, the blade is centered fairly decently. In fact, real decently. So let's see if we fixed our broken torsion bar problem. I'd say we did. Check for side to side play, and we've got a little bit. So we'll take our T8 Torx, snug things up just a wee bit. Side to side play is gone. No vertical play, so we're in good shape there. Kept our blade centering with just that little smidgen. And the knife still works great. So guys, we're going to call this one a success. Don't forget to like, share, and be sure to subscribe. We've got a lot more coming, a lot more interesting stuff. I got these in the other day, which is one of the final components for getting the cannon running. That's a fuse, and we'll be lighting some of those here real soon. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.